That's it. That's the line that unlocks one of the most quietly devastating scenes in the entire first season of Game of Thrones. No swords are drawn, no armies clash, no one storms out of the room. Well, one person does, but we'll get to that. It's just three men in a room, a king, a knight, and a killer, talking about the thing they all have in common. And by the end of it, only one of them is brave enough to tell the truth about what that thing actually cost him. So here's what I want to argue. This scene is not about war stories. Not really.
We're telling war stories.
On the surface, yes, it looks like a bunch of guys comparing notes, swapping tales of glory from the good old days. Three warriors reliving their greatest hits. But what it's actually about is the slow, painful death of Robert Baratheon. Not the physical one, that comes later, with a boar and too much wine. This is the emotional death. This is the scene where we see that Robert has been dying on the inside for years, maybe decades. And the brilliance of it is that he's the only person in the room who seems to know it. Now, a little context. By this point in the story, Robert Baratheon has been king for roughly 17 years. He won the Iron Throne by force during a rebellion against the Mad King, Aerys Targaryen, and was crowned largely because he had the strongest claim and the biggest hammer. But the man who sits on the throne now looks nothing like the warrior who won it. He's overweight, he drinks too much, and he's trapped in a loveless marriage to Cersei Lannister, surrounded on all sides by her family. The rebellion was the last time Robert felt alive, and this scene is the proof. Now, watch how this scene is constructed because it works in layers. It begins with Robert sitting in a room with two members of his Kingsguard, Sir Barristan Selmy and Jaime Lannister. And right away, the dynamic is fascinating. Robert is the king. He should command this room, but instead, he's practically begging for company.
Forced to mind the door while your king eats and drinks and shits and fucks.
He taunts Jaime, mocking him for standing outside the door like a glorified sentry while his king eats and drinks. At face value, it's casual ribbing, but through Robert's eyes, it's something sadder than that. This is a lonely man reaching out. He wants connection. He wants to talk to someone, anyone, who understands the language of violence the way he does. And here's where perspective switching reveals the real tension. Because Jaime Lannister does not want to be in this room, not even a little.
Who was your first kill, not counting old men?
You see, Robert is forcing him to play a game of war stories, asking about his first kill.
One of the outlaws in the Brotherhood.
Jaime answers coolly, an outlaw from the Kingswood Brotherhood, decapitated, clean, final, no sentiment, no story behind it.
Any last words?
Robert asks if the outlaw had any last words, almost hoping for some dramatic detail, some good material for the tale.
I cut his head off, so no.
And Jaime's response is ice cold. He cut the man's head off, so no, there were no last words. Think about that delivery for a moment. Jaime isn't playing Robert's game. He's refusing to romanticize his violence. And Barristan Selmy, who was there that day when a 16-year-old Jaime fought his first real battle, adds a brief, respectful nod of confirmation. For a single moment, there's something almost warm between these two knights, a shared memory, a mutual recognition of skill that has nothing to do with the man wearing the crown, and Robert is completely shut out of it. But Robert doesn't notice, or maybe he does, and he just doesn't care, because he pushes further. He asks Jaime the one question you never ask the Kingslayer.
What about Aerys Targaryen? What did the Mad King say when you stabbed him in the back? Did he call you a traitor?
Now, technically, Robert has every right to ask. He's the king. Jaime is his guard. This is casual conversation between men who lived through the same war. But in reality, this is a provocation. Robert isn't curious. He already knows the broad strokes. He's testing Jaime, poking at the one wound that never heals, the thing that defines the Kingslayer in the eyes of the whole world. And the answer Jaime gives is gut-wrenching in its simplicity.
He said the same thing he'd been saying for hours. Burn them all.
Jaime doesn't flinch. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't defend himself. He delivers the line, bows, and leaves. And that exit is important. It's not dramatic. It's not angry. It's the movement of a man who is bone-tired of being the punchline of someone else's story. Jaime has answered this question 1,000 times in his own head, and he's done performing it for Robert's entertainment. The moment Jaime leaves, the scene transforms completely, because now it's just Robert and Barristan, and everything changes. You see, with Jaime gone, Robert doesn't have an audience to perform for anymore. He doesn't have someone to mock or challenge. What he has is Barristan Selmy, the one man in King's Landing who actually respects him, not for the crown, not for the politics. Hiroshi, Barristan says, never learned the name. A lance through the heart, quick and clean, and Robert almost seems envious. Now pay attention to what Robert does next, because this is where the scene reveals its true heartbeat. He tells his own story.
Mine was some Tarly boy at the Battle of Summerhall.
And notice, Robert doesn't tell this story the way a man tells a story he's proud of. He tells it the way a man tells a story that haunts him.
Horse took an arrow, so I was on foot, slogging through the mud.
This kid came running at him, some high-born lad who thought he could end the entire rebellion with a single swing of his sword.
Thinking he could end the rebellion with a single swing of his sword.
And Robert knocked him down with his warhammer, caved in his breastplate, probably shattered every rib he had. And then comes the detail that makes this whole scene unforgettable. The boy shouted, "Wait, wait!" and Robert brought the hammer down anyway. I mean, just sit with that for a second. Robert is not telling a story about triumph. He's telling a story about a scared kid begging for his life. And the way Mark Addy delivers this.
Right before I brought it down, he shouted, "Wait! Wait!"
The heaviness in his voice, the pause before he continues, tells you everything you need to know. Robert doesn't see himself as a hero in this story. He sees the boy, he sees the mud, he sees the fear. And here's the truly brilliant part, because the scene doesn't end with that gut punch. It ends with a punchline.
They never tell you how they all shit themselves.
They never tell you how they all shit themselves. They don't put that part in the songs. Now, to anyone just listening casually, that's a dark joke. A crude, funny line from a crude, funny man. The kind of thing Robert would say to make people uncomfortable, to strip the polish off polite conversation. But what Robert is really saying is something much bigger. He's saying that everything you think you know about glory is a lie. The songs, the legends, the stories they tell about brave warriors and noble battles. It's all fiction, a beautiful fiction designed to make killing sound noble and dying sound meaningful. The reality, Robert finishes the story almost with contempt. "Stupid boy," he says. Now the Tarleys bend the knee like everyone else, and that line is doing double duty. He's dismissing the boy, but he's also dismissing himself. Because what kind of man's greatest achievement is smashing a kid with a hammer in the mud? What kind of life peaks at that moment and then just keeps going downhill for 17 years? And here's the deeper layer that makes this resonate far beyond this single scene. Robert is also talking about himself, because Robert Baratheon is the song, he is the legend, the great warrior king who overthrew a tyrant and claimed the Iron Throne. That's the story the realm tells. And nobody ever talks about the cost. Nobody asks what it did to him. Nobody sees the broken man sitting inside the myth like a prisoner. You see, this scene does something extraordinarily clever with our expectations. We came into this show expecting Robert to be the powerful king, the man in charge. But this scene flips that completely. Robert is the weakest person in this room. Jaime has his armor of cold sarcasm. Barristan has his duty and his code. But Robert has nothing. He has a crown he never wanted, a throne that's uncomfortable in every sense of the word, and a collection of memories that keep him up at night. First kill was clean.
Lance through the heart.
A lance through the heart. He never even learned the man's name. That's the answer of a professional, a soldier, a man who has divided violence into something manageable, something that fits neatly into a code of duty and honor. Baratheon can talk about killing the way a carpenter talks about cutting wood. It's what he does. It's what he's built for. But Robert remembers everything. The mud, the boy's face, the scream, the sound his breastplate made when it caved in. He carries it all. Every detail, every face.
Yes, it's been a long time, but I still remember every face.
It's been a long time, but he still remembers every face. And the difference between those two responses tells you exactly who is built for this world and who isn't. Barristan Selmy is built for knighthood. Robert Baratheon was built for war. And war ended 17 years ago. I want you to remember that Tarly boy, by the way, because years later, in Season 7, Jaime Lannister will ride across a battlefield against the Dothraki, charging straight toward Daenerys and her dragon. One man on horseback, thinking he can end the war with a single strike, just like that dumb, highborn lad at Summerhall. Robert's war story wasn't just a memory, it was a prophecy. But from Robert's point of view, there are no prophecies. There's no grand narrative. There's just a man sitting in a room, getting fatter, getting older, remembering a kid who begged him to stop. And the tragedy of Robert Baratheon is all right here, in this one conversation. He won the war. He got the throne. He got everything the songs promised. And it turned out the songs were lying the whole time. So the next time you think about Robert Baratheon as just the drunk king, the man who ate and drank and wasted the realm's money, come back to this scene. Come back to the weight in his voice when he describes the mud and the hammer and the boy crying out. Because this is the real Robert. This is the man behind the crown.
They don't put that part in the songs.
And when he says they don't put that part in the songs, he's not just talking about death. He's talking about everything that comes after.